Alright, video 19, day 19. Today we're talking about ways you can stay full in a calorie deficit. Okay, there's just so many, so I'm going to read from my laptop, hope you don't mind. The first one is to realize the difference between hunger and appetite. Okay, so hunger is your body's, biological need to eat because, you are hungry, right? And appetite, on the other hand, is a desire to eat. It's just maybe like, you walk past the fridge and, you saw somebody eating like strawberry ice cream and you feel like having that as well. Appetite is not the same as hunger. So I think that's the first important thing to differentiate here. What we're solving specifically in this video is hunger. Okay, so here are a couple of ways to beat hunger in a diet, okay? And again, like I mentioned in the previous video, it's not possible to completely get rid of hunger, but there are definitely ways that we can reduce it, and here's how. Okay, so the first thing is to keep protein intake high. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient. So just imagine if you are eating, 300 grams of protein, you're going to be much more full, right? However many calories that is, compared to if you have the exact same number of calories in potato chips, for example, right? So protein intake is key in a diet, okay? The second thing is to eat low-calorie, voluminous foods, okay? So that usually looks like fruits and vegetables, especially vegetables, okay? And especially fibrous vegetables, okay? So things like lettuce, chard, what other vegetables, capsicum, celery, eat low calorie voluminous vegetables, okay? The next thing is to eat more whole nutrient dense foods, okay? So this again includes vegetables, right? But it also includes, again, back to it, lean protein sources, whole grains, and fruits, okay? So that basically the spectrum of whole foods, okay? Related to that is to eat less processed foods. Okay, less processed foods actually have a higher thermic effect of food compared to processed foods, right? If you think about it, processed foods have gone through multiple more layers of processing, which means that, the more processing it goes through, the less processing our body needs to do, which hence, reduces the thermic effect of food. So whole foods are going to cause us to expand more to consume. Right, so we want to opt for lower processed foods, okay? The next thing is to increase fiber intake. And if you know, fiber is, found in carbohydrates. So we want to be increasing the amount of fibrous carbohydrates that we are consuming. That usually comes from things like whole grains, and again, things from like, fibrous carbs and even some starchy carbs, but just increasing fiber as a whole is going to help you with your satiation. Yep. Okay, the next thing is to avoid high GI carbs. So high GI carbs in a diet, are going to be really quickly digested, right? And it's going to, cause like blood sugar swings, which is not what we want. We want to keep that stable. So opt for lower GI carb options, okay? The next thing is sleep. Okay, very, very underrated, but extremely important is your sleep. Sleep in a calorie deficit is firstly so many things, but it's going to help you to curb hunger. You're also going to be, you're going to have less cravings, right? You're going to be able to make better food decisions because, your, again, hormones aren't, out of whack, right? When you're not sleeping. And also, actually, they found, right, that, when you are sleeping more, when you're in a calorie deficit, you're going to lose weight. But again, like I said, that weight can come from fat mass or muscle mass. When you increase your sleep, right, more of that weight that is lost actually comes from fat mass. So that's going to be very beneficial because, again, we want to hold on to as much muscle as we can that we have built, right, through training and through, all the things that we have done, right? And your sleep is going to be such a pivotal thing that is going to help you to hold on to that muscle mass and cut fat mass as much as possible, okay? The next thing is to slow down and chew more, okay? Ton of research on this, but keep it simple. Slow down. The slower that you eat your meals, the slower that you eat your foods, the more full, the more satiated satiated you're gonna feel, right? And chew more. So currently, if you're like, chewing 2-3 times and then you're like swallowing everything, like extend that out, right? And just chew your foods for longer, okay? I guess another one that I didn't write down is also like eating without distraction. I think that also helps this point. When you are distracted watching television, whatever it is, right, you're really focused on that, on what's happening, right, on the TV screen. You're not really like focusing on your hunger cues, your fullness cues, and on the food that's in front of you, right? So that's really something that is an easy thing for you to do. Start to be more mindful around your meals, and that's also going to help you feel more full, okay? A couple more things. Go for a walk. So they found that, when you go for, a light, low intensity walk, that also helps to, reduce appetite. So that's going to help you during a calorie deficit. I mean, also do it before, do it after. It can improve digestion as well. This is applicable even if you're not in a deficit. So it's just a good practice overall to start to incorporate. Okay, meal frequency. Meal frequency is something that is pretty interesting in a diet, and different people react differently to this. So some people prefer to have larger meals, right? And they feel more full. It can, kind of also have a psychological effect, right? They're like, okay, I'm still getting this much food in a diet. It doesn't really feel like a diet, right? But you're going to have to potentially have, maybe lesser meals, or again, if you fill it with low calorie voluminous foods, you can still be able to have, potentially a decent number of meals, right? But again, play around with this. I kind of feel like it differs for individuals, and there really isn't like smaller meals work or larger meals work. It's so many things that come into play. What do your meals actually look like, right? What is your current like lifestyle like? Do you have the time to have more meals, right? And yeah, what's your psychology like? Do you prefer to have smaller meals, or do you prefer to have larger meals and really feel full from each of that large meal, right? The next thing is appetite suppressants. Okay, so a couple of things here, right? The common ones include caffeine, green tea, and water. Okay, so again, realize that appetite suppressants is like kind of like an additional 1%. It's not going to make your hunger disappear, right? And it's not going to make you lose weight overnight, right? So I think that's something that is important to clarify. But in a diet, every additional 1% that we can dial in is going to make a really big difference, right? Imagine if you stack all those 1%, right? It's going to make a difference, okay? So here, what you want to do is, you don't really need to overload on all these things, right? But then again, if you really want the effect of really suppressing your appetite, you probably need to. Again, it's not really practical, but I would say for a start, at least make sure that you are, really getting your water intake, okay? 2 to 3 liters of water a day or more. If you are training, that's really going to help you have your water before meals. That also helps, and also have your water even after meals, right? Because a lot of foods that you are eating, say some sort of like fiber, actually like, require water for them to bulk up, right? So if you think of like things like chia seeds, things like brown rice, those sorts of foods are actually going to become more voluminous in your stomach, right? And going to help you to curb hunger more. And why this is so important, right, is I feel like this video could go on for a very long time. But why this is so important is because your stomach actually has like stretch receptors, right? Which is why things like salads, which are so low calories, actually work. Because your stomach has stretch receptors. So these receptors signal to your brain that you are actually full, right? So just imagine the more volume that you can put into your stomach, the more you're going to send the signal to your brain that you are actually more full. Okay, so try to make this work for you, and water is a good way to do this. Of course, it's liquid, it's going to exit your body really quickly, so it's something that you're going to need to keep doing. Okay, the next couple of things, add volumizing ingredients. So this is kind of a bro bodybuilder trick that the bros might know about. So a couple of things here, maybe including baking powder into your foods, like maybe your oatmeal can help to, make it look more fluffy and actually add bulk to the food. And again, that bulk is going to lead to you eating more. You perceive it as more food, even though it doesn't add any calories really. You also need to chew it more because it's more food, right? And because you need to chew it more, you're going to feel more full just as a result of adding that baking powder. A couple of other things like cottage cheese, right? High protein cottage cheese specifically is what I would do in a diet. Add that to like your omelets, to your eggs, right? That's an easy way to, you know, make the egg fluffier, get some additional protein in, and actually just feel more full, right? So a couple of like neat tricks over there. And then the last two, which I really like, are repetitive meals, okay? So there's a ton of research on that. I will potentially link one of my blog posts below. But repetitive meals are really important. It's the idea of habituation, right? Which is that, you know, you're less likely to overeat a meal if, you know, you're seeing more of it over time, right? There's less of a stimulus. You think about like how, you know, say you just had Japanese food. If I ask you to go for Japanese food again, you're more likely to tell me like, no, I'm kind of really full. But if I tell you that, hey, let's go for dessert, let's go for ice cream, you're going to be like, okay, yeah, I can. Like, I have like a second stomach for dessert, right? That's the idea of habituation, right? And by keeping your meals repetitive, you're actually going to reduce the amount of calories that you are consuming, because over time, you kind of get like, quote unquote, sick of the meals, right? And that really works when you are deep in a fat loss phase, really trying to dial things in. Okay, the last thing is to keep foods plain. Okay, I'm not trying to say like, you know, really like eat like disgusting foods and like just take the joy out of eating, because as we know, a diet is really challenging in and of itself. We don't necessarily need to add to the difficulty, right? But the truth is that, like, you know, basically tastier foods are more palatable, and the more tasty something is, the more we're going to eat it, compared to something that, you know, probably is a little bit more bland, a little bit more plain, a little bit more utilitarian, right? So if you can, try to keep your meals and your foods consistent. Try to keep them, you know, functional and simple and plain, right? And that's really going to help you in this calorie deficit. And I think it's also important, before I kind of round this whole video up, right? I've given you many different tips, and you know, when it comes to being in a diet, when it comes to being in a calorie deficit, realize that this is not a phase that you're going to need to be in for your entire life, right? You're doing it for a set period of time to achieve a specific goal, and then you can transition out of it. So having this like diet mentality 365 days a year, right, is not helpful. Instead, we want to be really efficient during the diet, apply all of these techniques, right, stack up all the 1%, get, you know, as fast of a result and as efficient of a result, losing all the fat and, you know, maintaining the muscle that we can during this cut, right? And then transitioning out of it into a health or a restoration phase. And it's not supposed to be something that you're in forever, okay? So hopefully this couple of tips and that summary sort of gives you a bit more flavor when it comes to dieting and calorie deficit. And yep.